Hey everyone, welcome to the Your Money Your Life podcast. We're at episode 280 of the podcast. Do me a favor, wherever you're listening, you like, subscribe, five-star rate and review this pod because we do this every week. And we want to make sure that you share this with family and friends that need to hear this information every week. Let's get into the market update of the week. We've got the market update as our first foray into what's going on this week in the current events. All right, let's take a look at actually just our chart here. We're taking a look at the S&P 500 chart. It's a Spider S&P 500 ETF Trust ETF. And so we're looking at it again, year to date, we are up 2%. So we have now reclaimed a positive performance on the year from the beginning of the year, which people said wouldn't, people would have worried that wouldn't happen in late May, early April, but we said be patient. Towards the end of April, early May, we'd probably see recovery as long as these trade and tariff situations got figured out, which again, they did. We've seen US and China now have a framework of a deal. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We saw European Union were one of the first people to make a deal with the US. Other countries, of course, will fall in line with these other two bigger powers make deals. So that's what's been happening. Economy slowing, but also inflation is starting to slow. And so that may mean the Fed will have wiggle room to cut rates sometime this summer, which is usually a decent sign as long as unemployment is in line and in range. It's a decent sign for the economy. If they're cutting rates, that means inflation slowed. And if we still have relatively low unemployment, then we could be in a good situation there. So that's probably one of the bigger things to look at. Let's actually read into what the CNBC is saying when it comes to the markets. We'll talk about that budget deficit in a little bit for the YouTubers. So the big thing is that futures are falling because there was a threat by the president to set unilateral tariffs on trading partners in 2 weeks. So again, going back to unilateral tariffs, Wall Street is continue to wait for more developments on trade. That's the big thing. What's happening with trade? Because that's going to affect every company in the world. It's not just domestically; it's in the world. Companies that do business globally, especially between the U.S. and China. We've talked about that. Two countries have been the focal point of this week. Trump said Wednesday he would be willing to extend a July 8 deadline for finishing trade talks with countries before higher U.S. levies take effect. So he said if people don't have a deal in place before this deadline, there's going to be higher levies on all these countries and all these imports and exports. But the extensions may not be necessary. And Trump was saying I would, but I don't think we're going to have that necessity. We made a great deal with China, so there is a deal in place, a framework of a deal in place. So they're dealing with Japan and they're going to deal with Korea. He said, but they're dealing with a lot of them. So we're going to be sending out letters in about a week and a half, 2 weeks to countries telling them what the deal is, like I did with the EU. So the deal with the EU was done. It was one of the first deals done, as we said. And now he's using that same framework to get other deals done. And here's a market strategist for Wells Fargo saying, I don't think that the market has a lot of faith that we're going to see at least that we're not going to see at least a little bit higher inflation. I don't know. We'll see because it has been slowing down. Of course, it's slowing down, but the prices are going to go down. But the this rate at which prices increase has lowered, and so that's the biggest thing there to look at. So those are the biggest developments right now: is what's going on with trade, what is going on with inflation, which has cooled and showed a few months of in target in line inflation, anywhere between 2.2 to 2.5% year over year increase. And so that's been a positive sign on the inflation front. And the market again has acted in kind. If we look at it over 1 year, things are up, almost 13%. 5 year, you've 2x your money basically. And so year to date, we're up 2%. So going into summer, which is typically slower trading times as people go on vacation, that is the big news on the market update. Let's look at actual current events. What's going on? We talked about inflation a little bit. Inflation nudged higher in May. A key inflation gauge ticked up in May, though less than the average forecast as businesses weigh whether and when to raise prices to account for tariffs. The U.S. Consumer Price Index, which we talked about, rose on an annual rate of 2.4% last month. So that was up from the 2.3% in April. It's the Bureau of Labor Statistics that gave us these numbers. And while the Federal Reserve has cited anecdotal evidence of price hikes by companies, it says it will wait for hard evidence. So again, CPA data came in pretty good. It's inflation is running cool with very little impact from tariffs so far. The data indicates that business imports are likely eating the cost of tariffs so far. So businesses are eating the cost of tariffs. And so there, that's again strong data showing that inflation is cooling, and we've gotten actually that cooling sentiment versus some of the fear that people had with inflation, with tariffs and the tariff strategy increasing prices. So that's a pretty interesting metric there. You could see all the breakdowns here if you're on the YouTube. You could see the breakdowns of all the different items within CPI. So we have food, home and away, energy. Of course, we have commodities, services that include shelter, transportation services, different than that nature. So those prices, we're looking at that basket of goods that people will use over the course of a month. So that's the big thing there. So we're seeing a lot of good stuff there on the inflation front with it cooling. So that's the big news on inflation. Again, the mainstay is will that trend continue through summer? And that will that give the Fed the purview to then cut rates, which is the next big thing that's going to be on the docket. When will the Fed cut rates? Inflation is slowing, so we can see that down the line. Next story, we're talking about Zara. Zara is flashing a warning with their summer sales forecast or summer sales. Let's take a look. I thought this was interesting. Did anyone used to shop at Zara? I did. I love Zara for a second. Men's section was cool. Fast fashion giant Zara is warning that the summer business is off to a slow start after reporting weaker first quarter than analysts were anticipating. Revenue and net income disappointed slightly, but the retailer said that the results were solid given all the tariff related uncertainty, adding that its global reach makes it well positioned to deal with volatility. So they're saying that they had a slow, that they're very much saying a slow start, and they reported weaker first quarter than analysts were anticipating. So it's a London-based company, and the analysts may have underestimated how adverse the weather has been in Southern Europe. Oh, interesting. So it's a weather-related thing as well. Um, so they're saying that some of that should come back into quarter two, that some of the demand should come back in quarter two. So again, for them, their fiscal quarters might be a little bit slightly off, as you can see. We're already in Q2, and they might report some of this comes back. So that's a good thing. And they're one of the biggest fashion retailers, and they're starting to feel a pinch. So are just people, I'm not that in tune in fashion, are people turning away from Zara, or is it actually demand slowing globally versus Zara just not having the fashion that people want? It's a Spanish retailer, excuse me, correction, Spanish retailer that reported 8.2 billion euros in revenue in the fiscal first quarter, covering February 1st to April 30th. So they are on the same fiscal timeline as you normally see default wise, but they just said they slowed. So people are really wondering, is that a bellwether for what's going on across other retailers or across demand in general for the summer and in 2025? So that's a big thing to note. We talked about it. US and China has a framework of a deal. There's more details to come about this deal, but this article is talking about there's a rare earth limit. So let's read into that. The U.S. also agreed. So the framework reached after 2 days of negotiation of the U.S. and China deal. China's agreement to supply rare earths, but the country placed a 6 month cap on the minerals export license to U.S. automakers and manufacturers. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The U.S. also agreed to curb restrictions on the sale of jet engines and parts to China, as well as ethane, a key plastics component. So they're just putting caps on their rare earth metals that they're going to be providing to the companies within the Contra country, right? And so that is, I mean, that's fair game. It's part of the trade deal. It's part of negotiations. They both know that both these sides want these rare earth minerals, and they're trying to make sure that they have a cap on what's allotted. So that's interesting enough to note. So yeah, that's fair enough. So it says that there's a 6 month cap. I wonder how that affects the businesses and if they re-up that based on this deal. It's a 6 month window that make signaling that licenses may get approved quickly once final sign off happens. So that's interesting enough. We'll keep an eye on that because I'm actually really curious. Was there any other special news to date? Oh, I guess I'm sure you guys saw this. There was a really contentious fight between Elon Musk and Donald Trump on a massive public fallout. So yeah, they were kind of in tandem during the election. Of course, we know that Elon was super helpful with resources and financially, and then also just like his reach to get President Trump elected. That's what they partnered together. But then there was a fallout. It happened pretty much when it seemed like when Musk went to the White House, and there was a point of contention between Musk and the White House on the forthcoming budget bill, which Musk has said would add to the government's debt and undercut the mission he was given to help reduce government spending. The bill also acts as the federal EV tax credit for customers, which jeopardizes Tesla's revenue from selling regulatory credits. And so Trump made a fairly direct attack on Musk, saying he's very disappointed in him and he helped Elon a lot. And then Elon came back. Without me, Trump would have lost the election and Dems would control the House and the Republicans would be 51 to 49 in the Senate. Things got even worse when when Elon said that Trump was the reason why the Epstein's files hasn't come out is because Trump is in them. He did later retract this. I think he posted yesterday, the day before, and apologized or said he may have gone too far, which is pretty much his apology. And President Trump seemed to have accepted it. So yeah, we just have a massive public billionaire president blowout here. Did anyone read that, see that? What do you think? I have no clue what's going on with them there, but it did affect Elon as far as the day the public fallout came. Tesla took a turn negatively, took a turn downwards, and wiped out 152 billion for the market cap that day. But they did recover a bit over the next couple of days and week. So that's to note there. Um, other news items. Let's see if there was any. We might have seen some other things here. Nope, nope, nope. I don't think there was anything else big. Folks, what did you think about last week's episode? Let me know if you want more guests. That's one thing we want to try to incorporate as much as possible when we can and when it makes sense. So let me know what you thought of last week's episode and if we should be incorporating more guests into your Money Your Life podcast. Comment, send in something, let me know. Let's look at the question of the week today. We're going to go back to it because we haven't done that in a while. So I do want to touch on that. First one being, what can you name one of the ways that consumers under age 25 establish credit? One of the ways consumers under 25 establish credit, easy. That's obviously credit cards or car loan or those two that I can think of, right? Get a secured card. Yep. Get a secured loan. Use a cosigner. Become authorized signer. Get credit for the bills you pay. So they're just saying ways you can establish credit because one of the obviously the terms of credit is the length of time you have credit and been in good standing, paid things off. Those are the ways you want to look at it. So that's a good tool to people to think about. If it gets under 25, you're trying to establish credit. Get a secured card. Secured card just meaning a card that you fund prior to using. And so it's just a way for the credit issuer to feel more secure funding to someone that has no credit history, but also getting credit and building credit via a credit card. So that's a secured card. And most people, in college or 25 or under can still just get a regular credit card as long as they're responsible. Secured card gives you a little bit of risk hedge that you're funding the card prior. So that's one thing to note. Another question. The original Nintendo console released in 1985 for $200. How much would that be in today's dollars? Interesting. So we're looking at inflation adjusted. Nintendo, it was $200 in 1985. That's quite interesting. I feel like that's a lot for 1985. But again, it was new system. Interesting. Inflation adjusted, so we're looking at 1985 till now. We've probably, that's what, how many years is that? 40 years or so? 50? So we're going to be looking at roughly, so if we're thinking 40 years of inflation, trying to do that, I might really want to get this. So 40 years of inflation and smoothing out of prices, but also again, 4 years, inflation's been crazy or cumulatively over the past 40 years. So inflation adjusted, I know we've 2x this at least, right? So that means we're over $400. Um, so for over 400, I think it's even a little bit more than that. I would go 450. Okay, the answer was $584, inflation adjusted. Um, so behind the numbers, it's inflation station. So you're looking at inflation adjusted, how much these things would cost. Console price adjusted for inflation. I'm actually on the website here. Super interesting, but I was close. I was close. I just shortened it a little bit. I was thinking of going a little bit higher. But that's it, folks. We made sure we hit our personal finance questions of the week. We made sure we gave you the news that you need to know. We also made sure that you stayed intact with us. So please like, subscribe, 5-star rate, review, and share this podcast. We do this every week. We'll talk to you next week.